All right, so we touched on this a little bit when HISA released their 2024 fatality data, racing fatality data, where the number at the HISA tracks, the tracks under HISA's purview were 0.9 per 1,000 starts, which was a landmark number, benchmark that we've been looking at for a long time and trying to reach for a long time to go under 1 per 1,000 starts. So that was huge. But now we have a little bit more context for those numbers because the numbers from the non-HISA tracks were also released, and the numbers are almost double the HISA tracks, 1.76, because these numbers are reported to the equine injury database. The overall fatality rate for all tracks in America for 2024 was 1.11 per 1,000 starts, North American tracks, I should say. So that's a pretty stark difference, 0.9 to 1.76 at the non-HISA tracks. Going just for reference, for 2023, it was 1.23 at the HISA tracks and 1.63 at the non-HISA tracks. So that gulf has widened to now where, at least in terms of fatalities, the non-HISA tracks are about half as safe as the HISA tracks, which is a market difference. And I think, is pretty telling, even if it's only 1 year of data, 2 years of data. Like, these numbers are going in opposite directions. They also released their training related deaths report, which was 181 at the HISA racetracks for 2024, which equated to 0.5 per 1,000 workouts. Now, it's very hard to gain context from this because this is the first time that this data has ever been reported. It's not like the equine injury database for racing where we have the numbers going back to 2009 and we can draw some major conclusions. So I don't know. I can't really say if 0.5 is high or low. It seems a little bit high just for workouts, just not for race speed or the vagaries and all of the action inside of a race. I can't tell whether that's high or low, but I just love that we have this data and that we can actually try to do something about it. And I don't know, man, like especially in California, like the changes that they've made to their dirt tracks in particular to make them some of the safest in the country. I've shouted out HISA, I've shouted out the horsemen. I got to shout out the track supers and all the people that have worked on these racetracks, because that's a huge job. That's an ever evolving job that kind of is done in the shadows, and people only notice it if things go wrong. Then it's like, oh my God, what's wrong with the racetrack? So I think I got to shout out a lot of the people like Glenn Kozak, Mick Peterson. All these people have put in a ton of work to make dirt racing in particular safer, and the numbers are just overwhelmingly positive to me, John.
Well, I think, Joe, when you're looking at the numbers, you have to look at it holistically. What are the HISA, directed racetracks doing? They're trending in the proper direction. And how is it in comparison to non-HISA tracks? And again, really trending in the right direction compared to the ones that aren't under HISA's purview, as you mentioned. So when people ask, is whether it's HISA or just the fact that we have unified rules now in place, is that having a positive effect on our industry? There's no question. Undoubtedly it is. And I think that's super important because it gives confidence to the horsemen. It gives confidence to people who are buying horses. Hopefully it gives confidence to people who are betting on horses as well, that they know that the horses that are out there have passed a number of eyeballs and professional reviews before they actually get into the gate. And it's not just, the responsibility of a jockey to be able to say, oh, well, this horse doesn't really feel right, knowing that he probably will never ride for that outfit again if he scratches a horse, even if he feels that the horse isn't sound. So we got all of those issues out of the way by having a set of rules that have been implemented, and the results are there. And I know it's only, people can say, well, the period of time is small. Well, it's been a year. It's not like it was a month or a quarter even, where you would say, is there really enough substance in the numbers to be excited about it? But Joe, one of the stats that you didn't mention that I think bears discussion, that was actually in the press release, says that the rate of 0.9%, so less than 1% of in the equine injury database, is a 35% decrease from the same rate that was reported in 2021, which was, again, prior to HISA's launch. But when you think about it and you say we had an improvement in anything in racing, an improvement of 35%. That is freaking significant. That is really sit up and take notice about, all the things that are going on. And I've also had people say to me, Joe, are the rules really the sole reason why? And I'm glad you brought up, no, it's everyone in concert working together to try to make this safer. People think that if there's an all-weather track, okay, like Turfway or Woodbine or any of the Tapeta surfaces, well, it's plug and play. You set it up and you never have to work at it again. That is not true. They are constantly monitoring and changing and adding sand and taking and scraping things off for things that are like, weather related, like rain or wind or humidity. Or temperature. I mean, there's a lot of tweaking that goes on, not twerking, Joe, a lot of tweaking that goes on with these racetracks. Even though you would think, okay, they're plug and play. And once we set up the Tapeta, we never have to worry about it again. And it's really true when in the Florida tracks, like I see it a lot when I talk to our friends over at OBS. And it's amazing to me the change in the surface from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon on a regular day, on just a sunny day. So kudos to everyone involved for making our tracks and giving our horses and the athlete and therefore the athletes a chance to compete on the safest surfaces under the safest conditions possible.
Yeah, well, and I think especially Bill Finley made this point in his weekend review, but the dirt tracks in particular is 1.18 fatalities per 1,000 starts on the dirt in 2024, which was really close to the synthetic number, which is 1.02. Those numbers used to be way further apart. Just for context, 10 years earlier, the number for synthetic tracks was 1.2. Number for dirt surfaces was 2.02.
Wow.
So that's a huge difference in the safety of dirt racing, and that's why this is what I wanted. Like when synthetics came and you had the revolution where Keeneland was replaced with synthetic, Hollywood Park, Santa Anita, all these tracks, they ripped up the dirt and put in the synthetic, and it was kind of as a disaster for handle and handicapping perspectives, and also just the fact that it was such an evener of ability that Bob Baffert had the famous quote where it made good horses look average and average horses look good. That was true.
Yeah.
That was 100% true. Just go look at some of those awful bluegrass winners. So then the flip side is when they rip up all those synthetics tracks, it's like, well, now are we conscripting more horses to die by insisting on having dirt racing? And now it seems like that's not the case. With dirt racing getting safer and safer and safer, that was always my goal, was like, let's make dirt racing as safe as possible. Don't get rid of synthetics completely.
Right.
We want it as a third surface, but let's get to a point where dirt is on par, or at least close to on par with synthetic tracks. So we're not just making the game less safe because it pisses handicappers off to handicap synthetic races. So I think we're getting there. And I think that's a huge part of it. The other thing too is, and Bill mentioned this in his story, is like, there's been some complaints, I think, from people like in my orbit as well, with a lot of horses being scratched because of the HISA rules, and like whether or not that's having a negative effect on field size, and have they overcorrected and are becoming too careful and scratching horses for minor things. And I think that does happen from time to time, but I'm quoting from Bill's story here. Before the racetrack safety program was implemented, 11.9% of the horses entered were scratched. Since HISA took over, the number has shown only a modest increase to 12.7%. So it's not as if they're just scratching twice as many horses, hoping for the best.
Right.
It does seem like they're being pretty surgical with the horses that they're scratching. Not to say that they can't, not to say that the vets or HISA cannot make mistakes, but it's just not an arbitrary thing. Otherwise, the numbers would reflect that. Yeah,
and I think, Joe, one of the things also that's a relatively new phenomenon that may be leading to additional scratches is that a lot of racetracks are adopting this 5-day in advance entry, 7-day in advance entry. So people have an opportunity to, trainers and owners have an opportunity to look at the overall scope of a race and decide whether or not they're going to run. Sometimes they decide they're going to scratch because it's just too hard of a race. Other times it's because they got a really bad post and they just don't want to have to try to run from the 12 hole. When on a turf, when the inner rail is out 60 feet, so really they're almost in the grandstand. So I think that also has something to do with the creeping up numbers of scratches. But I think overall, you have to be very pleased with the way that the horse industry has rebounded and taken care of its own, as far as making sure that first and foremost, the priority is the safety of the athlete.
Yeah, no doubt. And just to give you some more of the numbers just from the individual tracks, like Santa Anita had just one fatality from 2,579 starts in 2024.
Wow.
And in 2019, when they were at their nadir, they had 13 in that same time period. Del Mar, they had just one from 1,709 starts. This is on the dirt in 2024. So those are incredible numbers. That's as close to perfect as you can get.
Yep.
Also, just for 2024, the safest track was Horseshoe Indy. Shout out to the folks at Horseshoe Indy, just 0.26 fatalities per 1,000 starts, from 7,601 starts, which is an excellent number. By contrast, Arizona Turf Paradise were the worst among HISA tracks with 1.57 fatalities per 1,000 starts. But even that was like just kind of the industry standard. That was like the number. That was like the baseline number not too long ago. So we've made so much progress on this, and I just think that number, the 0.9 between 0.9 and 1.76 between the HISA and the non-HISA tracks, is pretty telling over the course of a year. And it's not yet another reason why I hope the Supreme Court tells the anti-HISA folks to get lost.